Hello. Hello, guys. Um, Thursday evening, here we are, June 25th. Hello. Hi, guys. Yes, here we go. Happy Mozambican Independence Day. Hey, friends. Here we are. Happy Mozambican. Feliz Dia da Independência Moçambicana. A luta continua. Hey, guys. Thank you for joining. Vamos fazer sessão em inglês? Thanks, Afonso. Thank you so much. I hope you're enjoying. Hey, Salma. Hey, Christine. Hey, guys. Today I am so excited. I am so excited. It's you guys can't imagine. This is such a session. I am so happy to be here today. I've been looking forward for this session today. Hoje, feliz nosso dia. Mas hoje a sessão vai ser em inglês. Porque o Celo só fala inglês, né? O Celo não fala português. Então, vamos ter uma sessão com o Celo Maake Ncube. Eu espero que vocês conheçam. É um ator conhecido, reconhecido no continente africano. Ele fez das maiores séries televisivas, Generations, The Queen. Most exciting, ele foi Lion King. Quando Lion King estava na Inglaterra durante muitos anos. Então, é uma pessoa interessante. Haverá tradução? Não. Como é que nós vamos fazer tradução hoje? Vai ser difícil. A razão por que nós vamos ter essa conversa, guys, é porque o Celo, como um artista africano, dos mais reconhecidos, há uns anos atrás, ele decidiu falar sobre a violência e vir falar sobre si, sobre a sua história, como abusador. Então, ele agora trabalha nos direitos da mulher, faz advocacia na área de violência contra a mulher, como um homem que já foi abusador e que então analisa essas coisas todas. Então, it's amazing to be... I'm waiting, he's gonna join us anytime, porque não é todos os dias, né? Com o teu inglês hoje vais ter que entender, com aquele português assim, vais ter que entender, ou com inglês, vais ter que entender a conversa, mas vai valer a pena. Então, ei prima, olá. Então, oi belinha. It's good news. We just have to wait for him to come in, and I hope he does, porque tínhamos combinado, falamos há pouco tempo. Mas pronto, se ele não chegar agora, vamos ver o que temos tanta coisa para conversar. Alô, guys. Alguém já está a querer levar carregador e tudo. Ok, pode levar aqui. Então pronto. Espero que tenha sido uma boa semana. I hope it has been a good week for all of you. We're still under lockdown. We're still under all these beautiful, crazy things happening to us. But you know what? We are here. We have to celebrate life and we have to enjoy life and make others also enjoy life. Celo, are you in? You need to ask me to join the conversation, Celo. Because I can see you there. There you go. Guys, this is... Thank you, Sean. So,
I think we're connecting. We connecting.
Hello.
Hey man, this BBT that is me is really getting into grips with things.
You know what? You know what? We have to
Yeah,
start. We have to start getting tripods. We have to get computers. We have to start doing this thing live, hey, and knowing how
absolutely,
to manage it.
absolutely. And we the what is it, the fossils of the past. We
God,
getting we have to be hip.
I
And
promise you.
I'm just glad I'm on the gram, man. I'm on the
Yes.
gram.
You know what? I'm
Yeah.
I'm happy with. Do you know what? This whole thing
Yes.
of being connected digitally is the same
Yes.
as knowing how to read a few years back.
I
If you
think
don't know
so.
how
I
to
think
read,
so.
if you don't know how to type in a computer, we were
Yeah.
behind. So imagine
Absolutely.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's absolutely spot on, spot on, spot on.
yeah. So this
You know.
session, I have to tell you, is this
Yeah.
session is, I think, my number 4 session as naked
Yes.
conversations, as we call it. And
All
I
right.
still don't have all the apparatus in. So next week, I'm
Yeah.
planning to have a tripod, have lights, have all sorts of things, and go and go
There
into
we go.
production. And go into
There we
production.
go. There we
But
go.
yeah,
Thank you. Thank you, Justina. And thank you to your viewers out there and those who are listening, because maybe they probably can't be sitting and watching, but they're driving or walking, you know.
and
But
you know
yeah,
what? There are people that are complaining from Mozambique. They're like, "Oh, we need a translation," and I'm
I
like, "Listen,
know.
today you're gonna have to scrap the English because
Yeah.
we having a conversation in English, and
Yes.
it's quite remarkable because in the sessions of the live conversations from Kuhluka, you are the first man.
Yes. Wow.
You are the
Wow.
first
Wow.
man.
Wow. Wow. I'm
Mhm.
honored. I'm honored. I'm honored.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
Darling,
Yes, ma'am.
we've had conversations before and we've been in many spaces talking about what is some people call the shadow pandemic, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I am not sure if we should actually be calling this a shadow pandemic because
hmm
it kills so many people every single day.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
maims so many women every single day.
Yeah.
It damages children.
Yeah.
What do we do about this?
For me, Justina, as much, it's almost, I think, going to a point of being genocidal. Basically, we are decimating ourselves, and it is such a painful thing that we are meting out brutality to ourselves.
Yeah,
And and in doing so, we are maiming our own image as the Black nation. And if we consider where we're coming from, where we have been maimed by the brutality of colonization, the brutality of apartheid, the brutality of imperialism, which and racism, and which in their makeup are so bearing the image of patriarchy. You know,
yeah.
I did a play. I wrote workshopped a play with young men from Alexander in 1998, and we workshopped a
Mm,
play called Komen. Yes. And the play
yes.
basically was dealing with domestic violence, as we called it at that time, from a male perspective. But when one looks at the piece in the new with the eyes of today, it was a play that basically dealt with toxic masculinity. So basically, in 1998 already, we were beginning to confront in some way the toxicity of masculinity. you know. But I guess it just goes to show that even more than 20 years later, the toxicity of masculinity is still prevalent and permeating our society, and now even in a larger scale, you know.
Yes.
And the thing is, like, now, now is the time to heighten, even the conversation. If ever we thought, and we would like to believe, that we are now free, that the revolution is over, maybe the political revolution is over, but the social and psychological revolution is
Absolutely.
only now beginning, you
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah.
that revolution requires men to engage their minds. It
Yeah.
requires men, if ever, there is this thing that we would always like to believe, that as men we are the households of
Yes.
in fact we are the heads of our households.
Yeah.
Justina, if you look at the composition of the head and what we find on the head, on the head we find the eyes, which
Yeah.
means the eyes are for vision. You're
Yes.
looking, but also you have to have vision for the future. And on the
Yes.
head you find the nose, and which is the only pathway for the breath that the body needs. On the head
Absolutely.
you find the mouth, which is the only pathway for food that feeds the body, and which is also the pathway for the expression of thought, which is in the
Mm.
mind. And
Yeah.
on the head, again, you find the ears, which is the only pathway for hearing and for being aware of the dangers around you, and even again for being able to hear the cries. So the head, and once the head is damaged, the body is, it's death. So which means, if we are going to take this metaphor of the head of the household, and basically the head is damaged, we see what we are
Wow.
doing to the body, which is the society. Yeah.
You've just rendered me speechless.
Sorry. I want us to converse.
Absolutely.
you know,
Because you know what? Even in our traditions, what we
yes.
learn is the man is
Hmm.
the head. And there's the whole thing that the man is the head and the women are the neck. So women support it.
Yes.
But I have
Yes.
never in my life heard such an explanation of why it's the eyes, it's the breath, it's the mouth, it's the ears. And if all that is damaged, what happens to the body? Phew, that is so profound. I think you're freezing a bit, Selo. Yeah,
Sorry.
you were
Yes.
freezing a bit.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Yeah. No. There was a call that is a WhatsApp call that was coming through, and that was interrupting us.
Yeah, no, that always happens.
Mm.
Oh my God.
Hmm.
As
So I
Kuhluka
mean,
movement. Yeah, go ahead.
yes, basically, what, and basically for me, if ever we are going to be looking at ourselves as the heads of our household, it means, we got to actually get to a point of sanity now, and we have lost our sanity. And what is happening is purely, it is madness. Nobody in their rightful minds, and as the head, because the head as well is the central place where the dangers around the body, even if, for instance,
Yeah.
you get I mean you get a I mean you or you touch fire, you know your hand will touch the fire, send a message to the brain, and the brain will say, move the hand. you
Absolutely.
know so
Yes.
which means, if ever we are the heads of the household, we are there, basically to protect, to care. Basically, the brain is taking care of the body. you know. And if we are the heads of our households, and instead of, you know, my feeling is that instead of protecting, we have to care. That's all
Absolutely.
we've got to do. We have to care. And
Absolutely.
love is not this euphoric feeling that we would like to believe. And especially, I would like to say, for men, love is caring in action. If ever you're going to see that somebody loves something, you know, I
Yes.
mean, and especially for men. And men, for instance, they would love their cars. Men would love their golf. Men would love their football. And basically, when it comes to football, it's like you're touching their, you know, like where it is most tender. And to touch a man's car, you know,
Hey.
touch a man's car. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and also, if you want to see again how a man loves their car, look at them when they wash it. The
Absolutely.
gentleness that is there.
And
So
when they
love,
and when they dry it.
and they dry it, and when they polish it and they remove the polish and give out the shine. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, and that just goes to show that love, it is not words expressed in love is not words expressed or words expressed with the mouth or whatever, you know, with just words
Yeah.
expressed. Love is caring. When you say you love something, we see how you care about it. When a mother and you know, loves their child, they don't say I love this child. You see them how they care for the child. And I think if ever as men, we are going to say we love our country, we love our nation, we are going to have to be seen with the actions that we take to care. It is not about protecting, it is about caring. And when you care for something, automatically you're protecting it.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, the comparison that you've just made is a bit cold,
Yes,
but
I
it's
know.
real.
Yes.
It's absolutely real. You know, you see how, you know, I'm trying to look at different situations
Yes.
where you see a man going to fight because someone has scratched their car.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that is love in action. You're right.
It is. Love
But
is caring in action, man. It's not a euphoric feeling that is just expressed in words.
where did we lose our ways? Because I don't want to believe that men in general do not love their women. And I
Yes.
think if we look at, let's say, at love relationships,
Yes.
you see at the beginning the dedication,
Yes.
the
Absolutely.
attention,
Yep.
you know, all that goes, the grooming, the whole grooming
Yes.
process, right?
Yes.
It
Yes.
is quite specific, and it
Yes.
is it's not something that you can be confused about.
No,
If a
absolutely.
man wants to go for a woman and he targets a woman, he will
Yes.
make sure she knows.
Yes. Yeah.
Where does the switch happen? Where does then you are able to supposedly love and hurt the
At the same
very
time.
object of your attention and of your affection?
You know, this is such a, I mean, such a very, you know, brilliant question, Josina, and in answering it, you know, it's also very difficult, but we have to attempt to deal and confront the situation in whatever way. We say we are having a naked conversation. Let's have the naked conversation,
We have
and
to.
let's, you know, and let's peel off the, you know, the mask that is hiding, you know, the truth here. And one thing that we're going to have to realize is men have, I think, an sort of like an inbuilt, an intrinsic insecurity. And for me, from how I judge and look at where they, you know, like the switch comes through. And I think that for me has to do with also our primal nature. You know,
Yeah.
when you go, you know, to look at how, for instance, how man was created, You know, I mean, and if we go biblical, you know, and they say God created man in his own image, you know,
Yeah.
and in fact, God said, let us create man to be like one of us, and let
Yeah.
us make him to have dominion over the earth and whatever and all the creatures. So as much as we would like to believe that we are the superior creation of nature, there is also one intrinsic part in ourselves which is very animalistic and primal, and almost, you know, when we react or when that primal instinct kicks in, somehow we cease to be rational about it, you know, and that is where I think men now have got to begin to deal with it. In fact, we've got to go through the re-education of men so that we don't operate from the intrinsic primal stage of ourselves, which is just animalistic. Here's the thing that we have to look at. When you are a man, you never know whether the child is yours. You laugh. You get told that the child is yours. You know what I mean? And I think, for instance, somehow that insecure space that is basically brought about by this, you know, not knowing, leads to men also even somehow getting too possessive, becoming too jealous. You know what I mean? But there's one thing that we've got to learn is that we are animals with a supreme, with a superior, you know, intellect than
Yeah.
animals. And we have
Yeah.
got to actually now begin to re-educate ourselves on how to function, and let us not function animalistically. Because with every man, and for instance, the men who kill their girlfriends, one of the notions that is there is that if I'm not going to be able to have you, then no man
No
is.
one will have it.
Then no man. And you see, that is just purely an animalistic thing, or, you know, in him, because he's not thinking rationally. You know, I mean, I even, you know, make a mockery in the sense that when you go and you do that, you actually even close yourself out of the human species, because now after you've been found that you have killed this person, you now no longer going to be having any relationship with women. So there is, you know, there is no
Really?
rationale in that. Yes, because when you go to jail, when you go to jail, you know,
Selo,
you've closed yourself up. You can't be with a woman anymore. And
Selo,
all because, yes, ma'am.
when you go to jail, and
Yes.
if you go to jail,
And if you go to jail, you know,
yeah,
and the thing is, you know, and you know, for gosh, you're taking me back to, you know, what I have heard earlier today about your case. I'm sorry if I'm bringing, but about your case in Mozambique, and that you know, your ex-boyfriend has actually just gone free. And that for me is such a
this,
sad state of affairs, because considering what you have endured and the mark that you still remain with as a result of that. And I think for the judicial system to overlook that and let the man go scot-free, you know, and basically, you know, it's going to be a sad indictment for all the women are going, and because that just shows that women are not safe anymore. And men are going to go, yeah, if he has succeeded, why not me?
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and men are going to operate with a sense that there is a certain kind of impunity. And if only the just system could realize that, you know, we are in a very, you know, like, in fact, I think maybe even the judicial system has got to operate with a set, almost like they are the international court, you know, the international
absolutely,
criminal court, you know, and because
absolutely.
this is genocide. This is genocidal, because even out of this judgment, I think there are, you know, spirits of women in Mozambique which are just torn and mutilated. You know, there is a
Absolutely.
beautiful line that I love in the movie Scent of a Woman, you know,
Yeah.
where Al Pacino says, you know, when he's giving the, you know, like the speech at the hearing of the young boy of his aide, You know,
Oh yes,
yes.
yes, at the
And there's
tribe.
a beautiful line where he says, there is no prosthetic for an amputated spirit.
Ooh, I didn't remember that. That's so
Oh
profound.
man, I tell you,
Is
and
no
what
prosthetic.
prosthetic for an amputated spirit.
Wow.
And
And you know
basically,
what?
what the judicial system has done, today, I don't know whether it was today or yesterday, they have amputated, like millions, if not hundreds of thousands of women's spirits. And
Yes.
I don't know whether they're going to have prosthetics for that.
You know, a big sister of mine in Mozambique just came in and
Yes.
she said, impunity without limits. And let's
Yeah.
not go into my conversation about what happened because then we're
Yes.
going to get derailed.
Derail, absolutely.
But
But I just thought, let me make mention of
absolutely
that.
no. Thank you for mentioning. But
Mm-hmm.
I thank you for mentioning it because
Mm-hmm.
I've received many messages of women who said, "What now? What now?" Because it's a case in which evidence is there. The judiciary have case. The they have a confession.
Mm-hmm.
They have all sorts of information and depositions from powerful actually experts,
Mm-hmm.
and they all brushed it aside and they put it as hearsay.
Yeah.
So it is really very hard. I think it's a situation where many women feel unprotected, and to a certain extent, but we'll have that conversation another day. To a
Yeah.
certain extent, I feel like I've been of disservice to these women because had I been quiet and not mentioned my case, perhaps history would have evolved in a certain way. And now
Um,
I feel like we've gone back.
Now, but if you realize that that every struggle, it is not won over, what is it? It takes some time, and
Yeah.
this is not basically, and going to your father's. I'm sorry, your father's quote. That this is what is the battle and the war.
Yes,
You,
someone has
you,
said
you lose the battle.
we may lose the battle, but we have not
Exactly.
lost the war.
We have not lost the
That's it.
war. And the one thing about it is that, and as we have started also even by equating, this, patriarchy and this, patriarchy with colonialism.
Yeah,
Colonialism thought it was going to stay on forever.
yeah.
And what is happening is this patriarchy, the day will come when we will see its fall.
On the knees, like we saw
Exactly.
George Floyd.
Like we saw George Floyd, and like we saw the Portuguese fall in Mozambique,
Yeah,
like we
yeah,
saw the South African government fall in
in South Africa.
Southwest in Namibia, like we saw the
Yes,
British and the fall
in
in Zimbabwe,
Rhodesia.
in Rhodesia,
Yes,
like we
yes,
saw the Afrikaner fall in South Africa, even the Portuguese falling again in Angola. You know what I
yes,
mean? And throughout the whole of
absolutely.
Africa, this is going to be a revolution for social justice. This is going to be a revolution for and a psychological justice, because at the end of the day, with all this that is happening, we have to heal psychologically, and we have to gain social justice for the nation, for all our women. Because again, as in Baba Mandela's data said, that
Mm.
the oppressor is equally wounded
Whew.
by by what he is doing, and men
Man, you are
men as much.
inspired today. you
Sorry.
you
and
are
and and
inspired. I'm
sorry,
writing this
sorry.
down.
But
Wow.
men, as much as, you know what, whatever, like the triumph that a man looks like he has gained after he has performed a heinous deed of abusing his wife, if ever one would even open up their conscience, it's an uncomfortable win. And hence, if ever, beating up a woman was a win only when you do it, it would not happen again. But the fact of the matter that it happens again, it means that very win was actually a false win. And sometimes, that desperation actually even leads to heading towards the demise of the woman. And also even, you look at this whole thing even in political terms, how the colonizers always tried to suppress, black people or, the oppressed. But in the final run, they're always gaining false wins.
Yes.
And in time,
yes,
the real win is the
yes,
victim's one, But also, and I think somehow men, if anything, I remember saying on a platform that maybe one thing that we should stop doing as men is we should stop signing pledges, but be
yes.
signing yes, we should stop signing pledges, but be signing confessions.
Woo! Today you are killing me. Yeah.
But that's
Explain
what
that. Can you please explain that? Because I was going to, as you're talking about this, I think one of the biggest points of our conversation today is really to try and understand what goes through a man's mind and through the spirit, because Selo, it is not normal. Or from my perspective and from perspective of other women, it's not normal, Selo. And I think what also defeats us more and more, and I think you've spoken about when you say the oppressor is weak, is equally wounded, is that, let's say you act abusively emotionally, and you perpetuate it. So you reinforce that abuse, or then is you abuse physically and you see the damage, because the damage is not like me who stayed with my face marked forever. But any woman that has been beaten emotionally, she is scared of this man. Anytime this man has something, anytime tension grows and you get to a certain point, this woman will retrieve. And you have to know as a man, I don't know, maybe I'm putting words into you, but what goes through a man?
Like I said, one of the things that men, we got to accept it, we are very insecure. And I sort of like try to paint that one of the things that makes us insecure is this fundamental thing that we never know whether the child is ours. You know what I mean?
For that, you got the institution of marriage.
You got the institution of marriage, but that also is no guarantee. But if only men also can wake up to the fact that, these days, what we have is science. If ever you are doubting, if ever you're going, like to be having a niggling sense of doubt, you know what I mean? And all you got to do is, time bends life, and time can prove a lot of things. And in a certain, at a certain point, and even when you've got the resources, you may even test, do a DNA test while the baby is not even born. You know what I mean? And I think men, we have to arise up to the biggest faculty that God has, or the supreme being has endowed us with, which is the brain, which is the mind. And if we would begin to operate with cool heads and warm hearts, that is going to be something that will alter all this phase that we are going through. And the insecurity, we got to really men has got to confront this insecurity that they have, of also feeling that, because you were talking about the courting and how that whole space, and the man is all loving and whatever. But now, once they have been received, then this when the insecurity, creeps in. And that insecurity, yes, that insecurity creeps in, and that insecurity makes the man feel that, because he knows, because somehow we use wit to get our way and to express our love to women. But that there's another man who's got an extra wit than you are. So when your woman could be having a conversation with that man, you will be outmaneuvered by this man when he begins to plead his case to your woman. And that's what at the end of the day breeds insecurity. And now, if ever we would even tie you to our belts and go with you wherever we want to. But that is impossible. And we've got to realize and wake up to it and begin to have a full sense of our own being and know that, you can never, under any circumstance, possess another human being as they would not, as you would not allow yourself to be possessed by them.
There's Aline, and Aline has been in Kuhluka for some time, and Aline has brought up a very good question from what you said, because she's saying trust and insecurity, and then doubting her is a trust issue that stems from where? Because let me tell you, perhaps, men and women are completely, it's Mars and Venus, right?
Yes.
Because a woman, the process is you court this woman. And when the woman says yes, she opens up to you in a way that it's more than biological. It's more than your mind. It's physical. And
the spirit. It's a spirit.
It's a spirit that opens up to you in a way that is it goes to her DNA, right? In the trust. And then that is a contradiction. I suppose it's also a contradiction to us as women to then start questioning, but where does it come from? Because I trust you with all my being. I'm here for you for better and for worse. And you know what? Women do the whole promise of better for worse way beyond we go to the altar. It's with the physical, with the sex, with the physical thing and so on. When a woman says she loves you and things, so it is quite inconceivable, and I'm having issues.
I'll tell you, one of the things that I just kind of feel and observe is that when we are being raised, we are not raised to understand the ultimate role that we are going to have to play in life.
Okay.
When we are born, if you have the opportunity to go to a kindergarten school, you will go there, up until you get to a point where you're going to do grade 1. And to grade 12. And after grade 12, you go to varsity, college, do a diploma, do a degree. And sometimes after finishing the degree, you do your honors, you do your masters, in whatever discipline, in whatever discipline that you choose. Now let's look at the very first 12 years of your learning process. You are being basically, in that 12 years, nothing is done to prepare you to be the husband or wife that you're going to be. And even when you go to varsity, you're not even prepared to be the husband and wife you are going to be. And after you've completed your schooling and you are now a lawyer or you are now a doctor and whatever, if I bring to you any doctor-related problem or lawyer-related problem or accountancy-related problem or psychological-related problem, because
You've
you
been
have learned,
trained.
you've been trained to deal with it. You just
Yeah.
go, oh, no. Let me see the problem. And you look at it, you're having an overview of it, an eagle's view over it, and you say, no. Okay, this is how we're going to have to solve it. And you go and you resolve it. But the
Yeah.
very ultimate thing, which after when you have achieved your degrees, and now you start working, and what is the role that now you need to prepare yourself for is to be a husband or a wife. And this is the one thing that you get certificated for before you even learn about it. Because you get the marriage
Selo.
certificate. Yes, ma'am.
Selo.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now let's look at our cultures.
Yes.
Isn't it true? Well, isn't it that we start learning, the whole
Yes.
conditioning to be
Yes.
a wife and to be a husband at early age? And then you've got, in some cultures and in countries, if you look at countries now, in Africa particularly,
Yes.
some of us have abolished, the whole
Yes.
supposedly preparation for it, right?
The rites of passage.
The rites of passage.
Yes.
So is that not a process? It's a different university degree and a college degree, but isn't that an institution or some kind of a course that supposedly prepares us for these kind of relationships?
No, but
Let's
is
not
it
even
still
say
happening?
marriage, but to deal
Yes.
with women and to know how to deal with men.
But is that still happening in its most respectable form? It's not. It is not happening in its most respectable form. And the thing
Absolutely.
is, and one of the
Absolutely.
things that I basically, argue is the fact that when because I just lost my train of thought, but it will come back. It will come back.
Yeah, we're saying,
But
is that not it's not a logical thing?
the right of yes,
The rites of passage.
it is back. It is back.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. That as I was saying, that you get degree and you get prepared to solve problems in whatever discipline that you are in. And here's one thing that we have forgotten. One thing that we have forgotten is that we are animals. Bottom line, we are procreants. Bottom line. And sometimes we tend to confuse what we have acquired in the process of our lives, the degrees, the careers that we have acquired. We tend to think those are the ultimate roles that we have to play. And whereas those are just but the crutches that makes us to go perform the one most or the ultimate role that we have to play, which is being a father, being a mother, being a husband, and being a wife. And that you don't even spend 12 years to learn.
No.
You don't even spend 4 years to learn.
No.
You learn it by accident. You become a parent by accident because you just made love. You know what I mean? And like I was saying, you become certificated. You get a marriage certificate before you know what marriage truly entails. You learn with a certificate in your hand, and which is the reverse side of things. And whereas all these other things, you learn and then you get the certificate after. And I think for me, the re-education of humanity has got to be re-looked into. It really has to be really looked into. I hope I'm making sense to you.
Problem, people calling and stuff. My goodness, what you just said is so impressive. We get a certificate to be married before we've actually done the marriage.
Yes. And we learn by trial and error.
But you know, the one thing that you are saying in this,
Yeah.
that we still need to unpack this, and I suppose naked conversations are going to take us there. It's really that. So then we're looking at an issue where we're trying to intellectualize issues, we're trying to rational issues that are not rational. Men are just beasts.
Yeah. Look, as human beings, we are animals. And I think that's one thing that we don't want to acknowledge. And hence, again, I say that, for instance, if we look at, and we look at, bottom line is that we are procreants. If you strip us off all the acquisitions, the careers and whatever, you know what I mean? It doesn't mean humanity is going to end. You know what I mean? People don't need to go to university to make love. You know what I mean? They don't have to go to varsity to make love. People don't have to go varsity to make babies. You know what I mean? But that is the ultimate role that we have to play. And this is where we are even messing up big time. And if we will even go, you know, follow the whole procreational process, you know, the most fundamental thing that we are here for in this life is somehow to, you know, for the survival of the species.
Of the very species we are killing right now.
And the very species that we are killing. And we are the only animals, you know, that kills, you know, one another. You know, not because we want to survive, but because of insecurity. And that is why the re-education of the male child is crucial. And again, the man has got to actually be accorded the space of, you know, going into confessional spaces. Really look at their own action. I said earlier on that men needs to go into confessional spaces and look and re-look at themselves. Life is a science, you know, and we tend to look at science only through the eyes of that in order to be a scientist, either you have to have maths, you know, and all this, you know, all these other disciplines. But political science doesn't need maths.
No.
Social science.
Analysis.
Yes, social science. Social science doesn't need maths, you know. Now, here's the thing. What is the process of a scientific, you know, a scientific investigation or scientific process? You know, the steps, actually, let me put that way, the steps into a scientific process. First, in order to go into a scientific process, you start with experimenting.
Yes.
And you start first with observation. You observe something. Absolutely. And then you start experimenting it. You know what I mean? And after experimenting, and the experimentation is the testing and whatever. And then you go through the process of classification. And after the process of classification, then you go to the process of now you actually have a certain knowledge.
And then you create a correlation and a comparison.
And you create a correlation and whatever. And after that, it is like, this man knows. Yes. But now and that is when we're dealing with the science of matter, you know. And then we go into the human science and the mental science, the psychological science, and the science, even maybe the science of self-control, you know. And to undergo the science of self-control, first, you're going to have to go through introspection, you know. And when you pass the stage of self-introspection, then you go to self-analysis. You analyze yourself.
A man devoid of that?
A man devoid of that.
Devoid of that
is, you know, basically it's like you devoid of your mental faculty. You're not utilizing your mental faculty, because your mental faculty is capable of introspection. Your mental faculty is also capable of self-analysis. And if you allow yourself to go through that process of introspection, self-analysis, after self-analysis, you're going to adjust all the things that you find wrong about yourself. And after, you know, adjusting those things, then you go to a point where now you are going to act rightly. You are not going to be acting because I know you know, but you basically because you know how to act rightly. You know the wrong things. You have adjusted yourself. You know that I do wrong when I do this, and I do right when I do this. And then from there, when you go to the next phase, what do you do? You're going to make sure that you eliminate the wrong and act rightly, and act righteously. And after that, you're going to have pure knowledge.
So
you have acquired knowledge.
So why do we have so many men then acting wrongly?
Because they are scared. Men are scared. Like I said, men are driven by insecurity. And sometimes we think that the strength that we have is the only power that we have, or the physical strength is the only power we have. Because again, we are not being trained to operate with our minds in such a way that we can even handle arguments. We can even know that we can express our views and our thoughts without expressing them in violence. When a man resorts to violence, the man himself, even countries themselves, it is because diplomacy and the ability to convince one another has failed.
I like that.
So a man who basically goes into that state of being violent is actually actually exhibiting the fact that he has lost the war. He has lost the war on the table of debate.
Yeah.
And I think, and if men could actually realize that the very person that you regard as inferior to you beats you to an argument, what does that say about you? And if you are not even able to go to a point where you agree to disagree, but we are not taught to use our mental faculties to its optimum, usage. We use very little of our brain. We are not trained. And considering again that we come from decades and centuries of not being allowed to exercise our mental faculties as we have been endowed them with. We need the re-education of the black man. And we are not going to.
How do we do that now when we're looking at a situation where thousands of women are being, let's just look at black history. Let's look at our continent. We know that there are thousands of women being raped every single day. South African statistics kill you. And it's not very different from the rest of the continent. How do we go through that process right now? What do we have role models? What are the role models? How does the conversation actually start when there is so much pain around?
For me, is that I think the indictment is on our leadership. And our leadership, when they got into power, basically, I think they were just glad that they have achieved or they've got their hands on the levers of power. And they never really sat down and said, okay, we've got our hands on the levers of power and of even resources to an extent. But where do we come from? From, I mean, what is it? Where do we come from? And when you look at where we come from and you look at what colonization has meted on the colonized, our leaders really needed to have actually maybe even created, pockets of psychological or social engineers and psychological engineers that we need to now begin to work on the dignity and the pride of our people. Let's get our people to a state where they now know how to function as well-rounded human beings, because they have been denied that by the colonizer. And what our leaders have done, all they did was get their hands on the levers of power and never looked at what has happened to their followers, and really went down to the ground and say, let us reconstruct ourselves. This is what has happened, and even begin to make analysis. In fact, you see, like the very same thing that I was telling you about of introspection. Our leaders have not done any introspection. Our leaders have not done any self-analysis. Our leaders have not twisted the neck, and they are thriving on that.
You're cutting a bit there, but
Okay, sorry.
can
I
we
think it's
then
the
extend? Yeah, but then when you talk about leadership, right?
yes,
Can we extend the concept of leadership to not just political leadership, but
yes,
perhaps traditional leadership, perhaps to it would be traditional leadership to church leadership and community leadership, because one of the concepts that now as Kuhluka we are working on is that
yes,
we need to influence and work with what we call the custodians of culture
yes,
and the
yes,
custodians of power. So custodians
yes,
of culture and custodians of power would be the same in that sense.
yes,
Because
yes,
yes, there are many of us that are influenced by our political leaders, but there's
right,
still many of us that are still influenced by our community leaders, by our church leaders, and by
right.
our traditional leaders and
Mhm.
healers, or whoever are the influencers in our community.
Right.
The ones
You know,
that,
I mean,
mhm,
for me, I know I've basically rented on that, political aspect. But for me, the bottom line still remains with the individual, because
absolutely.
the individual is the one that makes part of the tribal or traditional environment. It starts with the individual, and at this present moment, we cannot, I was just painting a picture of where our
Yeah.
leaders basically just faltered when they gained power from the colonizers. But in all essence, even they needed to actually even begin to have
Absolutely.
direct conversations with with their compatriots, and have genuine conversations with their compatriots, and begin to deploy people who will go into small communities and begin the conversations that we are now trying to have even now.
You know what? I'm not wanting to
Yes,
cut you there, but part of the conversation also needs to be amongst leadership. Because then when we talk about, our leaders, we normally think about men because we are in a very patriarchal position, we're in a very
yes,
patriarchal society, right?
yes, yes,
But within, and there's history within, for example, our liberation movements, the
yes.
ones that have put us in a position to negotiate. Oh my goodness, I only have 1 minute and
Minute
a
and
half in
no.
this conversation. Let's try and
Time
come back
flies.
just to close off. Yeah,
Okay,
it's
great.
conversation.
Okay, let's
We'll
do
come
that. Let's
back
do
just for
that.
15 minutes and to close it off. But my point
Okay,
was within the liberation movements, for example, and the ones that fought the
yes,
apartheid and the colonialism, as you're talking about, there are many incidences of gender-based violence.
yes,
The women were fighting and the men were fighting for a certain goal of independence, but
yes.
there was a lot of oppression and violence even within the ranks.
Absolutely.
So where
We'll,
we
we'll, we'll,
going?
we'll come, we'll come back. I think let's come back, let's come back to,
Yeah.
because I think we're going to get cut off, isn't it? Should we
Yeah,
just
we have
suspend it
one
for
minute,
now
but
and then,
yeah, let's formally cut it off and then come back.
yeah, come back to
Okay.
it? Okay, great.
All right. Thank you.
Cheers.